Hi, my name is Marcy, and I'm here to show you how to make great tasting whole wheat bread. Let's first start with the things that you'll need. A 1 cup measure, a 1/3 cup measure, a 1/4 cup measure, and a tablespoon, as well as a liquid measuring cup. You'll also need a pastry brush, a rolling pin, a cooling rack, loaf pans, and of course your mixer. Now I use a Bosch mixer for many reasons. A Bosch mixer will do what other stand mixers just can't do alone. It makes better bread faster and easier because of its 3-arm dough hook design plus the strength to mix up to 15 pounds of dough. The dough hook incorporates oxygen as it stretches and folds dough against itself, processing all of your dough every 4 rotations around the bowl. This greatly enhances the gluten development. That's not to say that other mixers won't work. You just have to work a little harder to get what you want. A few optional but very helpful items are a meat thermometer, a liquid thermometer, and a kitchen scale. Now let's move on to our ingredients. First, we are going to start with whole wheat flour. For the softest bread, you will want to use white wheat flour, freshly ground. If you don't have the ability to get fresh flour, your bread will still taste and feel basically the same. But once wheat has been ground, some of the nutrients are lost over time. The advantage of freshly ground flour is that you don't lose those nutrients. After the flour has been ground, if you don't use it all immediately, you can freeze it to preserve it. We will also need instant yeast, vital wheat gluten, salt, white sugar, vegetable oil, cooking spray, and water, somewhere between 100 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. This is where the thermometer comes in handy. And our last ingredient is 2 eggs. One optional ingredient is dough enhancer, which may prolong the life of your bread. Now let's get started making our bread. We're going to start with our whole wheat flour. 6 cups, or about half of what it requires. Next, we'll want between 1/4 to 1/3 cup sugar, or you may use honey. 1 tablespoon of salt, 4 tablespoons vital wheat gluten, 2 tablespoons instant yeast, and if you decide you want to add the dough enhancer, you'll need to do so now, 2 tablespoons. Now let's briefly mix the dry ingredients. And now the liquid ingredients. 2 eggs, 4 cups of water at about 100 to 110 degrees. It is important that your water is within this range so that it's warm enough for the yeast to grow, but not too hot to kill it. And now 1/3 cup of cooking oil. And we're going to mix all of these ingredients until it's well incorporated. Now we are going to let the dough rest for about 10 minutes. This is an important step as it allows the gluten to bond and gives the dough more elasticity and makes the bread softer and less crumbly. Once the dough has rested, we are going to add the remaining 6 cups of whole wheat flour. Once you have added all but the last cup of flour, you'll want to stop the mixer and test the dough. The trick is that the dough should be sticky to your bare fingers, but if you grease them a little, it won't stick. After all of the flour has been added, you'll want to let it mix for 10 minutes. Our 10 minutes has passed, so we're now going to prep the counter and get ready to roll the dough. First, we want to spread some of that cooking oil onto the countertop so that none of the dough is going to stick to the counter. You never want to put more flour back into your dough after you're finished mixing. Now it's time to roll out the dough. As you are taking dough to form each loaf, you don't want to pull from the large dough mass. Instead, use a pinching or cutting method to break it away. Pulling and stretching the dough will cause the gluten bands to break and result in crumblier bread. This is where your scale comes in handy. If you want your loaves to be uniform and cook the same, then you measure them all the same weight. We're going to roll the dough into long, narrow strips so we can get all the air bubbles out. Then we're going to start at one end and roll, pulling tightly, all the way up to the top. Now we're going to take that roll, pull the ends to the middle, press down, and then pull up the sides to the center again. We'll flip it over and rock it back and forth to shape the loaf. This is what your loaf is going to look like in the pan. Here I'm going to show you how to make some cinnamon bread using a smaller loaf. This time we want to roll it out into more of a rectangular shape, about the width of the loaf pan. Once you get that shape, spread a little more of your oil onto the dough. And now sprinkle it with the cinnamon sugar mix. Make sure you coat it heavily so that you get that nice cinnamon flavor mixed into all of your bread. As you roll up the cinnamon bread, pull and stretch downward to make sure that you eliminate any excess bubbles. And if you need to, tuck in the ends to keep the cinnamon from falling out. Then set it gently inside of your pan. You'll want to allow it to rise until double or triple in size. Preheat your oven to 340 to 350 degrees. Carefully place each loaf in the oven and allow it to bake for about 30 minutes. Here is where your meat thermometer will come in handy. If you used a scale to measure each loaf, they should be uniform and cook the same. Checking just one loaf will suffice. Gently place the thermometer into the center of the loaf. When it is done, it should read between 190 and 200 degrees. Place the cooked bread on a cooling rack and then lightly coat them with your cooking spray. Once they have cooled slightly, you'll want to remove them from the pans and allow them to finish cooling on the cooling rack. Once they are cool, you can store them in plastic bags and freeze them for up to about 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy your bread.